I'm Councillor Hargreaves and I'm chair of the committee, and I'll be chairing tonight's meeting. This event is being streamed live on YouTube, and members of the public and the media are welcome to watch the meeting remotely and listen to the discussion taking place. So I'd like to welcome you to Committee Room 1 at Kensington Town Hall and to everybody watching on YouTube. Before we proceed this meeting, I think I would ask members of the committee to make sure that your mobiles are switched off or switched to silent or whatever, please. I think it will be appropriate for us to start with 72 seconds of silence to remember those who lost their lives in the Grenfell tragedy. Thank you very much. So we now move to item number 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I have not received any apologies for absence. However, Andrew has asked to leave about 15 minutes before the end of the meeting. 7:45. Okay, thank you. Item number 2, declaration of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare on any of the items on the agenda? No. Declaration of interest, thank you. So item number 3, minutes of the previous meetings. So we have minutes of the meeting of the 5th of March, an extraordinary meeting of the Audit and Transparency Committee took place on the 5th of March 2024 to consider an appeal by Councillor Eva Judd in relation to councillor conduct. This meeting, the committee was chaired by Councillor Sidney Axon, Councillor Abdullah and Councillor Gregory Hammond were temporarily appointed to the committee to consider the appeal. Tara sat on the committee as well as the non-voting party. So the draft minutes of that meeting were circulated via email on the 3rd of April for comment. Councillor Hammond and Councillor Nova agreed via email on the 3rd and 4th of April respectively that the minutes, in their opinion, represent an accurate account of the meeting. Therefore, are Councillor Yankson and Tara satisfied with the minutes of that meeting that took place on the 5th of March? Okay.
Yeah, so I've just got one comment. So we refer to the chair, but then Sidney's down as the vice chair. Probably need to just clarify who chaired the meeting. I was looking to the chair of the meeting.
Yeah. Just so everybody knows, the first meeting I chaired and then was an appeal, I couldn't chair it. So it's the vice chair stood in on that. So just okay. So when we clarify that, can I ask you to say? So then we turn to the minutes of the meeting held on 18th of March. The draft minutes of the ordinary meeting that took place on the 18th of March was circulated via email to all members of the committee on the 10th of April. We haven't received any comments back, so I'm assuming that the committee are happy with those minutes. Are we agreed?
Just one about the housing allocations. They accepted recommendations. These would be implemented by the 31st of March. Given we're approving these now, I assume those have been implemented. They're not on the action tracker, I just want to lose them, that's all.
So we can move on to that chair in the next item.
Yeah, I've got Claudia here who will be dealing with later items. So you can clarify that for later, please. Looking as though he can do that. Thank you. Great.
So we're going, I presume the electric vehicles on a track or something.
Yes, it's in the track.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Right, where do you want to sign, please? Thank you. Now we turn to item 4 on the agenda, which is the external audit plan. I was saying it hardly seems a year since we had this meeting a year ago. But we now have item 4, which is the external audit plan. Grant Thornton has received our pack have issued the external audit plan 2023-24 covering the council and the pension fund accounts. The external audit plan sets out the respective responsibilities of the council and its external auditors. Significant risk to be audited, material threshold used to determine matters reported, and proposed audit fee for 23-24. So can I ask Paul if you could introduce this, please?
Thank you, Chair. So my name is Paul Chaplin. I'm a senior manager with Grant Thornton. I work directly for Paul Cuttle, who's the engagement lead you probably normally see here, who signs off the accounts. Paul can't be here tonight. We're both called Paul, so it gets a bit confusing. So the audit plan provides an overview of the planned scope and the timing of our 2023-24 audit, and which is about to start the audit of the financial statements for 23-24. The highlights of the plan are probably on page 25, is the best page to go to. It's page 7 of the report. So the plan sets out our significant areas of risk and our proposed work to address these. We will formally report the results of our work back to this committee at the end of September. And by the end of September, we then hope to be in a position to then sign off the council's 23-24 financial statements. In terms of significant risk areas, there's no change from the previous years. The first significant risk is management override of controls, and this is prevalent in all public and actually in private sector audits. So every audit has a risk of management override of controls. And consistent with the prior year and other London councils, we also had the valuation of land and buildings, the valuation of your investment properties, and the valuation of your pensions asset as a significant risk areas, due to these being large numbers, significant and complicated estimates that you're assisted with by experts such as your valuer and your actuary. We also have a significant risk around accounting for provisions on liabilities, particularly resulting from the Grenfell tragedy. So our materiality is set at £12.4 million for the council, which is the same as last year. We won't be changing this in the post statements. The expenditure we've noticed has gone up slightly, but we'll keep the materiality the same, can be very close. In relation to the value for money work, at the planning stage, we have not identified any significant weaknesses in the council's arrangements. We will focus our areas of work on areas where we found some minor improvement recommendations in the previous year, which comes in a later report. The proposed fee for the audit is set by the public sector audit appointments, and that is £359,000. So I think that's all I want to say on the plan, but obviously happy to take any questions you have.
Well, just at this, just at this stage on timing, because it's always crucial every year, isn't it? We were, as we nearly always are, one of the few councils that got our accounts in by the end of May, which was excellent, and thanks to all the staff for that. I mean, now it's very early days, I know, but are we looking okay on the timeline?
Yeah, you've given us the accounts on time. We've got a full set of working papers, so we're up and running. It started a little bit earlier than last year. Might be a bit slow for the first 2 weeks before we move into July, but yeah, we hope to be in a position to give you your opinion by the end of September. So that'd be really good. The council are generally very good at providing us evidence and invoices and other documents that we request for the audit. And I've fired a few questions off and already got responses today, so that bodes well. So at a very early stage, we're just starting, but
Yeah, I'm confident that we'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, last year, although we signed March, obviously we were ready by the end of October, we had obviously the capitalisation section to wait for. So
Just for the committee's benefit, you'll see we do have the meeting in September when we are due to look at the review, but we've got a second date in October in your diary, which is a reserve date. Because if you remember last year, we had to slip that to an October date. So the September date is the intended date. if when we progress there, we come across any problems and we have to extend that, we have an October date in our diary. But hopefully we won't need to use that. Okay, so Liz, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I think Andrew would say the same thing. But I know that the fee is set externally by the central body. But I was somewhat surprised that last year it was 161,000. This year it is more than doubled, 359,000. The pension scheme is the same. It's 94,000 this year. It was 51,000 last year. I've looked at the audit plan that we had last year. There doesn't seem to be any sort of change of scope or level of work that's done. Is this extra money profit, or is it because you've doubled your rates, or are you doubling your hours, or how can you account for that?
If I'm honest, in the previous years, the fee now is back to where it was 10 years ago. And the level of work that we do now compared to 10 years ago is far higher than before. So all the fees across the sector have gone up. So the average fee for London Borough is now £435,000. For a pension fund, it's 90,000. So you're below the average for London boroughs on both of them.
Could I just challenge that? Do I ever remember a fee of over £300,000 for discounts?
I think what probably all means there is
Around 10 years ago, under the Audit Commission regime, they were around back ones, but maybe it's
Well, if it's specifically wording, I don't think the fee for this council was actually.
we did have a discussion around this earlier in the year when all the fees across the country, when they went out to retender with all the fees across the country, with all the firms offering or significant increase. Maybe David or Mike, do you want to comment on this? Because it is a significant increase, but there's a whole backstory on this, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the fee here 10 years ago, but where I was previously, it was certainly over 400,000. I remember that. So I think and we can look at what the fee was here. I don't know that it adds much because this has gone through a tender process. These fees, as we said at previous meeting, have gone up a lot, but they've gone up because basically the system was collapsing. Audits were not being done because the fees had been driven down so much that the work wasn't getting done. And I think we've been lucky in a way because our audit has been done, but there's a lot of authorities that haven't been done. I think the firms have probably treated it as their total income for the number of audits they do and managed it like that rather than allocating resources according to what fees individual authorities are being paid. But I think there's no doubt that the fees had just got too low. Now whether they justify going up to this much, I can't completely say, but what I can say is it was through a procurement process, and that was where we ended up. So I think we have to accept that, and I do actually think it's better having frankly what was chaos in the system, which I agree we didn't really see here, but I've seen across London and across the country there's just been chaos in the audit system because of the where the fees ended up.
But Mike, just again to build on what you said, the procurement system was not our borough procuring on its own.
No,
it was across. So yeah, this fee was not particularly fixed by us as such. It was fixed across, wasn't it?
Yes.
And all boroughs will be being charged a similar fee to this.
Yeah, there's a scale fee and then there's a variation around that according to the council, but it's within those parameters that are set by the procurement exercise. And I know the City of London were outside of that, and I don't know where the City of London ended up, but I believe virtually every other authority was involved in that PSAA.
Yeah.
And
Well, let's try and stick to this year versus last year. I think it is worth a question and some answers as to why has it doubled based on what Liz has said. Same scope, same assessment of risk. We were asked to save money, value for money. This is a material change between years without obvious change in the, well, the scope of the audit work. I don't think we can accept any other charge on that basis.
I agree.
But there is, the reason is because the fee, I think the reason we're giving is that because the fee was too low last year.
So you were making a loss last year.
Massive losses, yeah.
And that was
The
the
sector
whole,
came to
that
us
was the
and
whole.
people, we have a firm not doing all this because they're making too much losses and they were just post
I just think it would be worth a proper paper after the challenge and question has been raised. Why has there been the increased fee dues, which goes beyond this is a number that's given to us and we
Yeah.
have to pay.
And an analysis of the hours and the rates and, you know, what it was last year, and, you know, so we could see quite clearly what you're actually doing and, yeah. Yeah.
Can I just ask, Chairman, I think essentially what it was they were at the end of a procurement contract and they were out of contract, and so this is a retender price, and that, which is just at a higher pitch. What I am interested in is what are the variables and how tightly have we been able to drive back down the variables, because that's the additional cost, which actually there shouldn't be that much more this year.
Well, we don't know what variables are, do we? So
Well, I don't know if
That's
some
not
variables have been included in the quotes, in the cost in here. Or the
Well,
extras.
Mike, can you just clarify, to what extent is this an RBKC figure that RBKC have negotiated with RBKC variables? Or what extent is this like a global procurement and a rate that we are therefore given for that?
We haven't negotiated it. We've been given the fee by Grant Thornton, but it's based on the scale fee that that came out of the procurement exercise. There's some variation around that. I suspect we're on the lower side.
You're much lower than the
Yeah, so we're lower than the average because of things like the working papers having a good record on working papers and so forth. So there are variables, but they're pushing us down rather than.
So is there anything you can produce, particularly from the procurement PS? What is it? PSA. Yeah, PSA. That states the basis of what they negotiated and what the rate is based on.
Yes, the hours, because that is, it's an hourly rate
It's
that
our
they
style.
charge.
It
Scale
is,
rates.
it is, Liz, but it's not. This is not an RBK hourly rate to get.
No, it's Grant
We can
Thornton's
bring
hourly
some more
rate. It's not
information
like
about
the
how the
hours,
fee is
yeah,
made up
things.
and so
Yes.
forth. So we can bring that to the next
That-
committee.
I think it's just some reassurance that
But
this is
we haven't negotiated it.
No.
We should stress that, and it is a fee that's come out of a procurement exercise, so it isn't one that's you know that we can do a complete breakdown of everything that we're charged, but we can give more information about how the fee's made up and what came out of the procurement exercise and how it was more than the previous.
perhaps also just one of the other reasons for this is that a number of firms that were doing this service pulled out.
Yeah.
And therefore we're down to about 7 firms now or something who operate, who do local authority. So again, that procurement exercise, we lost a number of providers. And
Well, I think we need that background explained, and what we need to ask the question of those who have negotiated whatever the national contract is, to be told what is the basis of the contract. What's the name of this committee?
So the public sector
Audit and Transparency Committee. This is not transparent at all.
Okay.
So can we do that?
Yeah.
Can we make a request?
Yeah.
Paper.
Yeah.
And perhaps another time, I think it would be a good idea that, because audit fees are always a sensitive and important issue, for us to have like management recommendation why this is an acceptable fee. And we'll see how far it goes beyond being told this is a figure that's been given.
we did discuss this earlier in the year. And getting a nod. we did discuss this. We discussed being party to this bigger procurement body, and we did get the figure, I think, earlier in the year. Did we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really have a choice. We could have. I don't think we really have a choice. I mean, by signing up for the process, and I think going outside the process would have cost more. By signing up for the process,
We don't
we're
know that.
accepting the outcome.
We don't, do not.
Well,
We don't know that. That's
I mean, it's
obviously
double.
true. But
Being part of the process.
we were part of the process before. I mean, we were part of the previous process. Now we're part of the same process repeated, and the same has happened to every local authority. So if we'd have gone on our own, which I don't think we actually particularly have the skills to do, I think we probably would have ended up with no auditor, and then we'd have had to have paid. Then we'd have had to have joined the process after the event. But I mean, I can't prove that because it didn't happen. We didn't do it. So. But
Okay,
what we're saying is
let's do a bit of clarification. That I don't know whether we're going to get down to hourly breakdown. I don't know.
Well, it gives broadly the hours
Yeah,
spent.
yeah.
I mean, they'll have records. Right?
But
And we can see the hours spent last year, and we can see the hours spent this year.
I think it's just the rate of the hours that's gone up. I
Well,
don't think there's a substantial change.
No,
in
the
the
way
work
you
they're
said
doing.
it, but
No,
That's the point. Yeah.
Well,
It's
I also noted that it's become more complex as well. So actually, the auditors are spending more time on audits now than they were in previous years.
the audit plan, I
Because-
compared it to the audit plan last year, and there is no change.
Okay, can we get some clarification because we're starting talking in the dark.
But our audit did get done last year, despite, I would say, despite some difficulties caused by the capitalisation direction and the slowness of DLUC in responding to the capitalisation direction. So I'm actually very pleased that our audit was done. Most of my colleagues or many of my colleagues across London, across the country, are not having their audits done. They're not going to be completed, and that's, there's a big argument about whether that's down to the council or down to the audit firm, which we can't get into because we did get ours completed, despite the fact that I think we were probably more complicated than average because of the capitalisation.
Well, I think we need more information and we need to be able to discuss this.
And also, I did note, on the page on audit fees, page 40, last year when we had that presented, we had the comparison of the prior. It's not. It is. Sorry, it is here. Sorry.
Is it possible also is that public what other councils pay?
Yeah, it's on the BSAA website.
Right, so can we also have a breakdown or just a list of what variable councils across London pay?
I did a quick comparison before I came tonight. So the average vehicle funding is 435k.
Can I just ask about the value for money? I assume there's a value for money.
No, that's
Okay,
in
that's
that thing.
included.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so more information needed, if only to help people understand why there is a huge increase in the fees. Andrew, ask something else. Go on.
Well,
move on.
no, I'm supposed to ruminating on this, that I've never seen a fee proposal which is doubled
No.
and with no explanation given other than
No.
falling back on something that's potentially outside our control.
Yeah.
So I think we can sort of, let's take the next step and see where it is. I think it's worth investigating. As part of that,
So just if we do that, which we need to do, we need to understand what the alternatives are, because the alternatives are to a certain extent determine the outcome.
well, I'd like to come back to, yes, what the alternatives are, because I remember having a discussion about this process before, not this year, and it was whether we're in or out of this national programme. I do think it merits having a look at that again and knowing what the terms of the contract are and when we can look to an alternative process.
We can try and find out what the City of London's fee, where I know that they would rather have been in, but or certainly the finance direction.
Well,
we can look at what
And
What
then
prices?
just what's all wrong about this is that there's very few things we can do to, so we don't know what variables there are and sensitivities there are on the fee calculation. We have actual work done here. We should be of a mindset that where we've got a large fee for something, to consider what we can do to help manage that fee, control it, reduce it. And one point I've made about these reports, these are very long reports. There's a lot of repetition from the previous year.
Yeah.
And we're just asked to understand a bit more about where time and effort is spent on the audit process so that we can go into an efficiency circle and look to see whether actually we agree on that the audit is being carried out efficiently, is it meeting our needs, etc. Things we see are very long reports and a lot of repetition in previous years.
I mean, I'm not sure it's for us to evaluate, to judge how efficient the auditors are, because that's,
Well,
because it's a statutory audit, but in terms of our contribution, I think we've already, as we've said, our fee is lower than the average, and the reason our fee is lower than the average is because we are better than the average council at providing working papers and getting our accounts done on time. And
So that will come out when we look what other boroughs
Yeah.
do, what the fee for other boroughs are. And if there's any way of and that may do it. Look, if we didn't do that, if we were just an average council, we weren't one of the first to submit our account, we didn't provide the documentation in the format, the excellent format that we do, what would it be? Because that's worth looking at. But I think I need to give some help on this. I don't know to what extent we have, if we're in this scheme, we have much choice, either on the fee or the firms we use. So that might be worth just putting in the paper. And if we were to go outside on our own, what would that involve? And would that involve such an inordinate amount of your time that actually the 50 grand we save is actually taken up in your time?
And it would involve setting up a separate audit appointments panel to both consider the procurement and to contact.
So if we did go out on our own, which of course is different than private sector, who can pick and choose their own, we are part of this.
Well, we've decided to be part.
Yeah, we don't have.
No, we don't have to. That's what I'm saying. Let's try and look at, if we weren't, what would that mean? And it would certainly mean probably a lot more work for this committee, but let's look at that.
it would definitely mean more work for the committee, for officers, and it would.
Why? How come for all? I mean, I can understand. You know, we have a beauty parade, we have pictures, and we'd select an auditor. But why does that mean more work for officers?
We've got to write the specification. We've got to. We'd have to write the specification. We'd have to evaluate the procurement. We'd have to get expertise in to help us do that, I think, because
You have to do due diligence on the firms that were looking at. Sorry, you have a bit more experience of this
Yeah, I've done
in
some
other
procurement.
public bodies.
Quite a nightmare, so if you can avoid doing it on your own, that probably will save you quite a lot of time and possibly money, but I mean, it may not save you the differential in the audit fee, but that's why you need to know what the pros and cons are.
Yes.
and the outcome of course of doing that may be a lower fee. I think it would be a higher fee, but it may be a lower fee. I accept we can't know that. But the risk is it would also be a higher fee, and the risk is we may not get anybody bidding as well. So I think they're the two massive risks of doing it, and that they're the downside risks. The upside opportunity is we may save a few £1,000. Well, I don't think we would, but we may. I can't prove we wouldn't.
Well, I think we need to do some more work. This has been an issue for a number of years, so let's grab it and see where we get to. But I wouldn't be too fatalistic that there seems to be a cartel going on here. We won't quote for the word unless you pay more fees.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised from all the meetings I've been to if we get an auditor to quote outside of the scheme. I'd be really surprised, but I could be wrong.
Let's see.
Let's see.
It's more work for the firms quoted as well, obviously, because at the moment they're quoting for a range of work rather than for one job. So
So they quote every year within the parameters. Do we get a different price? So
It's only 5 years.
Years.
Every 5 years.
so
contract.
this figure will be in this, so you talked about a range. Is this figure the figure we will be getting, and it won't be going up in the next few years, or what's the upper end of this range that we could be getting into the 450,000?
do you know what the
Go by inflation.
Whether there's a higher range, there's things that happen like building standards change and stuff like that, and issues with factors in. So sometimes there's fee variations that go on top of that, yes. But I don't know if there's a sort of ceiling.
I think
Okay, I'm going to pause this one now. I think Andrew's raised a very valuable point there. This is a huge increase. We'd like a bit more background information, and at least a nod to what an alternative might look like and what work would be involved in that. And Tara, if you can give any experience to Mike and Dave on that, from David on that.
And it's very in the general terms, but it might be worth asking City London how they.
Okay. Any other questions then on the plan? Sydney?
Chair, just a very quick question. Bottom of page 21 and the final paragraph, the overspend of 2.8 million. And in the paragraph above, there's already been savings of 13.6 million. I just want some understanding on that 2.8, where you've identified it and what you think can be done to bring that down still further. This is the last two paragraphs.
So
of page 21.
Yeah, so the last paragraph is talking about the 23-24. That was the position as at month 9 before the year end. So I'm not quite sure where the council landed in the end of that position then.
So with the complication on page numbering here.
Yes.
So we're on page 21, which is the big page.
Page 3 of the
Page 3 of the report. Can we use the big page numbers going forward, everybody? And then we're all talking about the same page. So page 21, big page numbers.
So that's 2.8 million is after taking into account all the savings, you've overspent by 2.8 million as at month 9.
And my question was then, did you identify in the plan what could be done to actually try and remedy that, or what could be done to remedy that?
I think it's going to have to do.
That's probably one for management.
Yeah,
because
management to do that.
Yeah,
Not the auditors.
And that would have been in the 3-month forecast. That would have been in the forecast paper that goes to leadership.
right.
Yeah, there's an outturn report going to, well, that was the quarter 3 outturn forecast that went to leadership team in earlier in the year, and the outturn report's going in July.
It's out the scrutiny committee tomorrow night.
So we can.
July.
Then that's to the 31st of March, to the year end.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's 4.1 million. So it's out.
Okay. So
So it's like that at the year end now, but it isn't for the auditors to.
Yeah.
It's out of not overspending.
That's ourselves. Page 32. Progress against prior year audit recommendations. There's a lot of factual stuff there. Are you auditors content with what you've read in there from the officer's side?
Certainly, and as our testing commences, we'll obviously pick this up and make sure that they are what they've said to us as happened in practice.
Okay, fine. Any other questions on that?
Just a question on page 41, please. Yes, could you just talk about shadow year and what IFS AFRS 16.
So, yeah, so as IFRS 16 is a new standard around leases, it means more leases, operational leases will come onto the council's books, onto the balance sheet. For 2023-24, the council only has to put an estimate of what they think the implications will be, because it doesn't start till 2024-25. So for this year, they just need to put a brief explanation in the accounts on what they think the implications of implementing IFRS 16 will be on the books.
So,
And next year we audit it in earnest.
so in terms of the balance sheet is going to increase substantially,
It will increase a bit, yes.
and they also will have to be valued. So there's
Yes.
work.
Well, there'll be more work to do, yeah.
Okay, and then how what type of lease are you picking up?
So these are leases that leases and other arrangements that contain the use to an asset, the right of use of an asset.
And that's this we are the lessee or the lessor. So we're
Yeah, so
the lessee.
Okay. Darren.
I have one very quick question, I'm sure it's fine. On page 28, on the pension fund valuation, on the bottom right hand, right hand bullet, we're going to go to the introducing flexibility, sorry, on different assumptions, pension valuation. Because you said that they, small changes in key assumptions like discount rate, inflation rate.
Right, yes, that can make a big difference to the
Yeah,
actual.
so presume you'll do some sensitivity analysis.
Yeah,
To
sensitivity
see what
analysis.
the worst and best case could be.
Yeah, we use our own valuation expert as well, our own actuary to help
Thank
us
you.
with that.
And I take this as a pension liability because you refer to an asset.
That's an asset in this council. The
asset.
pension fund done really well over the last few years, and you have a fairly big asset on your balance sheet. It's become a bit more common now in the public sector as the assumptions have moved kind of in your favour.
But do you refer to the pension fund net liability? It's not materially stated. I mean, there are just some little inconsistencies I picked up throughout. I don't want to bump through these here. I'm happy to give you my notes.
Yeah, no, that's
Okay,
fine. We can
that's
manage
fine.
that. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
May I ask?
So yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask on page 22, in relation to Grenfell. We talk about mitigating the financial impact on the public purse. And I just want to make sure that we are clarified. I think I know what the answer is going to be. Are we assuming here that whatever impact there is on the public purse will be distributed equally across residents of the borough, or will there be any protection for those residents who are impacted by the disaster itself?
Question of management.
David, is that something you can all mind?
Sorry, which line are we?
Under Grenfell, the Grenfell section on page 22. So we have the civil claims referred to there.
I can't see it. Yeah, sorry.
That's
Sorry, I'm missing.
It's
But
Line, what line?
the penultimate line of the first paragraph under Grenfell.
The reference there to the public mitigating
Yes.
impact of the public purse is very much in line with the strategy of going through the alternative dispute resolution
Yes.
process to resolve claims rather than
Yes.
to go to litigation, which
Yes.
is much more expensive. So that's what the
Yeah.
consider reference there is in terms of how we reduce that
Yes,
cost.
I understand that, and that includes compensated, resolved and compensated in a way that mitigates the financial impact on the public purse.
Yes.
What I'm actually asking is, to whatever extent that impact is on the public purse, is there any assumption that residents affected by the disaster itself will be protected from any call on the public purse for this purpose? Or in other words, are residents expected in the Grenfell community expected to pay through the council tax or what have you, or reduce services for the impact of compensating other people?
No,
Or
we're
disaster they didn't do?
speaking where the intention is that that isn't the case, that they won't pay. And there's protection in two ways, obviously. One is that we're not paying for the compensation directly from council tax. And secondly, that in any case, the council tax which the Grenfell bereavement survivors pay is ring fenced and doesn't pay for the council's general activities, because a part of the council's general activities relate to Grenfell recovery and Grenfell legal costs. And that was why we do that protection.
So there is that arrangement for the bereaved survivors for them to be protected from paying costs of the disaster by the council. What I'm asking is there any such arrangement for the residents in the immediate community of Grenfell who are terribly impacted and who so far have been paying for their own recovery? Is there any way to protect those residents from the cost of compensating the 900 plus claimants for the 1100 civil claims?
Yes.
Because those claims are going to be maybe paid by borrowing, or maybe we're going to take legal action and recoup those costs.
Yeah.
We may or may not be successful, but either way, it's the council, isn't it?
Well,
Paying, whether it's a loan and the interest on the loan, it's still the council that's paying it.
ultimately, it has to be paid by the council.
Yes.
But it isn't paid from, it's not going to be paid directly from council tax. We're going to pay for it by borrowing, and then we're going to pay for the borrowing by the savings that we've made on the pension fund and put into a reserve, and then we're also going to seek to recover costs from other defendants that we will use to pay off the borrowing. So the whole strategy is aimed at making sure that we have sufficient money to pay everything that is due to the bereaved and survivors and the victims of the tragedy, but to not directly pay for it with council tax, with anybody's council tax.
Thank you.
But ultimately, obviously, it is the council that will have to pay it.
That's what I mean, whether it's services. And I suppose I just want to.
Or not by reduction in services either. We're not.
Right.
That's why.
And I suppose what I just want to suggest is, in the interest of becoming a fairer council, should not the arrangement and ring fence for bereaved and survivors be applying also to the immediate community of Grenfell?
I don't think that's a question we can answer here.
No,
I think it is a question that needs to be answered by the leadership team or the benefits.
It's a policy matter.
That's a policy matter. Yeah. Okay.
One question on page 92, which is about the litigation. And I wonder whether we as an audit committee will actually be seeing the value of litigation claims.
If we are,
Page 92.
92 is in the section. That's real risk. They're all wrong. That's a real risk. Yes.
Are you on the same page as we are?
Okay.
That's page 5.
I've got no idea that there's a shift between.
No, I think you're also.
I think. Oh, sorry. Okay. Fine. Sorry.
Okay, so on these, we've got the one for the general fund, and we've got the one for the pension fund here, the two plans. I'm going to draw a line under that now. We've had some very meaningful questions, and we're going to get some comeback on that. And Councillor Simmer's point is a point for wider reflection by the leadership
But
team.
also, I appreciate the clarity that we have received as a result. Thank you.
Good. So can we now move, so those are to be noted for information. So can we now move on, please, to item number 5, informing audit risk.
Page 31.
So item 5 relates to audit risk in the last financial year, obviously. There is an error on the front page of the agenda pack, which gives a financial year 24-25. Liz will have spotted that. And I get in there first, Liz. But it relates obviously to 23-24. This has been corrected online. So Grant Thornton provided the committee with a report informing the audit risk assessment for the council. This includes management responses to a series of risk assessment questions to obtain an understanding of the management process and the council's oversight of the following areas: general inquiries, fraud, laws and regulations related to parties, going concerns and accounting estimates. So Paul, do you want to?
There's probably not much more to add, really, Chair, than that. Yeah, so we've raised certain questions for management covering them areas. These are management responses, and we asked the committee to see if they're satisfied with these or any iterations they wish to make.
Are you happy with management's
Yes, we are.
responses?
We've
difficult
got,
for us
yes.
to comment, really.
So we've got through the responses and we're happy with them, and it's in line with our expectations.
And it's also the same as last year.
Questions will be virtually the same, yeah.
And are they the same across all local authorities?
Yes, because they're driven by the standards of the standards, yeah.
I mean, I get slightly to a point that Andrew raised about the size of these reports. Although these reports are standard local government reports that have to contain the information.
Yeah. They're driven by the accounting standards and auditing standards as well, right?
Could we have your conclusions in this report? That would be helpful because
You ask for ours, yeah.
the judgment, your judgment. So what you said, can that be written down?
Yeah, we could like that in the end.
I think that.
And that was the point about the question asked in the other report. You ask questions, we give answers. There's nothing that says we like that answer or that answer is satisfactory or that finishes it off.
No, that's fine. We can add a conclusion on them.
Yeah, I think that would.
Any specific questions on page 5, please? Yeah.
Just, I always find we never really have any transparency or clarity on legal claims. Because we never see anything, the audit committee, there's never a value put on. And I always do wonder whether in fact that's something that we ought to look at or.
Is there a particular part in
Sorry,
here?
it's paragraph 5 of page 92, which basically says legal services enters a high risk register, but it's not that I'm looking for names and identities. I'd just like to have a value of cumulative claims and to understand that this is X million or it's actually only 100,000 because of the claim. And I'm not necessarily referring to the Grenfell claims behind this, but I think it's, and I don't understand whether some are spurious or not, but there's never a value attached to any of this. So it's always I never know whether it's just in the ether. There's nothing that ever comes to this committee. There's always a list of law firms and there's a list of cases, but never shared with the committee. So
in terms of general claims, Councillor Gardner, we can definitely share some performance information around claims handling. So the insurance team manages all the claims that come to the council in terms of where the council is liable. So we can set out where liability has either been accepted or denied, and numbers of claims and value of claims have been settled. That's not a problem. In terms of the Grenfell claims particularly, they've been part of an ADR process, which is confidential. So, but with what has been published is the council's contribution to the global settlement, for example. So the decision to enter into that was published.
I think we've had Grenfell briefing, I respect that, but it's more.
We can certainly provide a briefing as a
general.
And would that sit in here, or would it be a separate briefing paper?
We can provide a briefing paper and see if you want to discuss the committee, if that helps.
Yeah.
Be separate to
Yes,
be separate to this.
Yes, yeah, be separate to the audit. Yeah.
My question then is, there isn't a place in here where if that figure was put, it would answer that question. It's not appropriate in this paper, is it? I don't know.
So in terms of general claims, I've got no problem with that. I think it's when we get into the Grenfell ones, we're
not getting the revenue.
I think it's merely flagged.
Yes, we can
There's a
provide a
gap,
separate briefing.
in terms of what
Yeah.
information.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Just sort of linked to that, in the paragraph above it, there's a procurement challenge that's been brought in. We have no idea what the magnitude of that is.
Yeah.
It could be 5 quid, be a lot of money.
There's a significant claim has been made by a contractor, which the council is robustly defending. So I think at this stage, it wouldn't be appropriate to put that in the public domain. And it's subject to litigation.
But we can say it's significant.
But the council is robustly defending.
Are we going to disclose that as a potential contingent liability?
It's in the 23, 24 accounts as a liability, yeah.
Okay, so as far as this paper is concerned, any more questions, please? Okay.
Sorry to be used, I had a couple of very small ones. Corporate anti-fraud services, because that says it's for staff, I think. So that also includes suppliers and contractors who contact them. Hotline.
Yes.
Yeah, anyone can. And then the only other one was page 93. related parties. It says key management personnel and post member of the family of key management personnel. Does that also apply to members as well?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's a paper for information. Any more questions or observations on that? And we move on to item number 6, please. And report the council's value for money arrangements. Appendix 3 of the report, consisting of 3 pages, were not included in the paper due to a publishing error. A supplementary paper has been put on your table. Can members please confirm that they are happy for us to go ahead with those papers put on your table, as opposed to deferring the action? Okay, so who's going to introduce this? Yeah, please. Yeah.
So this is our auditor's annual reports for 2000.
Andrew, we're getting our money's worth tonight. Our whole fee's going out tonight.
I have to set a call back.
Carry on.
That is our 2022-23 auditor's annual report. Apologies for it slightly delayed. We have been paying catch up on value for money work over the years. The report covers our work with the council's arrangement. It covers 3 areas of financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy efficiency and effectiveness. So the report's positive, and we have not identified any significant weakness across any of these 3 areas. As a firm, nationally, we are seeing the amount of significant weaknesses increase across the sector, particularly in financial sustainability. And London is also a case where the amount of significant weaknesses in financial sustainability has gone up. Our conclusion is, although here the budget, assuming the budget is still challenging, and the council has a very good track record of managing its finances effectively, proven by the 2022-23 small underspend position. So we raised 4 improvement recommendations covering these 3 areas that are aimed at strengthening arrangements further. So the areas of improvement were to update the HRA 30-year business plan, making sure that the council's risk register is matched with the council's plan, ensuring a perceived lack of independence, the role of head of internal audit in relation to procurement function is documented, and we're happy with the response we got there. And considering a more streamlined performance report to assist members with reviewing challenging performance reporting across the council. As regards to 22-23 financial statements audit, we gave an unqualified opinion on the council's financial statements at the end of March 2024. You're one of the few authorities in London that had an opinion at that time. At the moment, the firm has now delivered opinions on 67% of 22-23 opinions. The rest of the firms have delivered 7%. So that's the problem of the sector. There's only 7% of other firms have delivered opinions for 22-23. Delay in finalising the audit was not caused by the council, as officers were awaiting the capitalisation collection from government. Once this was provided, the council updated their financial statements accordingly in a short space of time. So that's the conclusion. It's a positive report. No significant weaknesses. So under the old regime, you have a qualified, unqualified kind of opinion, which you don't under the new regime. It's a commentary. But if this was under the old regime, you'd be unqualified. So it's a positive report with 4 improvement recommendations. So it's
Thank you. And just looking at page 121, from green to amber in on that one. David, do you want updates on the head of procurement appointment?
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. So our previous head of procurement left at the end of December. We've been through a rigorous recruitment process, and the new head of procurement starts on the 16th of September. Currently working their notice period at their current employer. So we'll have the strategic procurement team and head of procurement in place and fully staffed later this year.
Good. Any other questions on the value for money? I read this, but I'm always slightly skeptical when you get reports that are just all fantastic.
Yeah.
So I was trying to read this to catch you out, but I couldn't. So maybe my more technical members of
I mean, yeah, it's not green, is it? So it's amber. So it's not green.
That's good.
I just find it really frustrating because I know quite a few of these things have already changed.
Yeah.
So for me, my question was, how do we make this more relevant going forward when you're doing it this year?
So I think we've now brought up with our accounts work and value for money work, so we are on where we should be now. So you'll be getting this report a lot earlier this year.
So when did, sorry, just on the same point, when did we get the 2021 and 21-22 reports? I can't recall those. Because when I looked last year, we had a conclusion on 2018, 2019, and 2019, 2020, but I just got a bit lost where we saw 2020, 21.
They have come through the
Yeah,
committee.
they come like last
They have
year.
come through late last year, yeah.
Yes, so we get the end of the report in 2 years.
Yeah.
It's in November, I think.
We have
last year.
Yeah.
by 3 members opposite, but it wasn't you, Tyler. Had quite a few points to raise on this, what I remember.
Yeah, okay.
So we did do it.
We did do it, yes.
Any other observations or questions, please?
It's the only thing is the risk management strategy that dates back to 2018 and it was raised in 2020, 21 and it's still not completed.
Yeah, it's all coming this autumn. On its way.
Okay.
Does that go on our tracker?
Is that a track?
Oh,
I was a little bit not clear about the table on page 129. I didn't actually know what the changes in funding meant. And also in kind of middle column 26, 27, the top service pressures, worst case scenario is 10,000, best case scenario is 13,000. I think I must be misreading it.
They're millions, so that'll be
Millions,
so yeah, that'll be, this is probably taken from the council's kind of sensitivity analysis on how the budget's moving.
But why is the best case one higher than the worst case one?
Because they're pressures. So it's financial pressure, so the higher the pressure, the worse it is.
Yes, it's the other way around.
Oh no, it's that way around, yeah.
Sorted.
That's good spot. I think we've got around all the right way.
Yeah, I think it's around the long way.
Okay.
But it says changes in funding. Can you just talk me through it? I mean, so we've got a kind of very different figure, 25, 26 to 24, 25, for example. I just wanted to know what that meant.
We'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
perhaps we can get this table redone with those changes on and a bit of an explanation.
Thank you, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I think I had one on page 131, which was really about the HRA business plan, where I was the lack of it, the 20-year business plan. And I appreciate that it's going to be updated starting in 2025. So for me, the big takeaway here is actually, can you really flag this in your value for money report that you will be doing?
Yeah, we follow up all the recommendations made on in this report, and that be coming to the.
Can I just follow on from that, just briefly, on page 134, the improvement recommendation. I think it's worth flagging up also council's intention to do a comprehensive review of the HRM in 2024, and that perhaps that needs to be followed through as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask one very quick question on 143? I think we had this before, but overdue fire risk assessments. We've got that on another tracker, haven't we? So
We have.
yeah, it's getting better. It's rather long.
Okay, so that paper, any more comments on that paper?
Please, Mr. Chairman, there's a couple, and I'll go on page 139 and 149, 140, which just says management comments, and it says to be confirmed in yellow.
They're in the appendix, I think, management responses.
Okay.
So I think that additional paper that we were getting. Okay, so the committee is asked to note the findings and recommendations of the annual report, and you've noted them. Thank you. Can we then move on, please, to item number 7, which is the and we have a couple of people coming to just sort of put in front of the table. The report we have in front of us summarises the work of the internal audit in the last financial year, including an update on the work completed since the previous report to the committee. Provides the audit opinion of the Director of Audit, Fire, Fraud and Insurance on the adequacy and effectiveness of the Council's framework of governance, risk management and control environment. The information is used to support the Council's annual governance statement. So, Moira, do you want to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. You've pretty much done that already, but thank you.
It's an external briefing, you cover it.
Yeah, so this is the, as it says, it's the annual report. So this brings together an opinion on the control risk framework council. Now, so as far as the control framework is concerned, most of that has gone from our audit work that we do during the year, which we report to you on a quarterly basis. And as the chair said, that there is an updated progress report in here for the last period since the last meeting. In addition, so there is a limited assurance report in there which relates to the digital team. And in addition, I asked Kojo to come along today because at the last meeting we had the housing allocations audit. Kojo wasn't able to do it until it's really bad again. So that's kind of wrapping up the year end with hearings. As far as the year goes, as you can see on page 162, there were 4 limited assurance reports in there. All of the asset management ones was this committee previously. That's not unusual, it's a reasonable number and it's in line with the other boroughs that we worked with. In addition, we had some positive implementation recommendations. That's been going well. And that's reported, the progress on that is reported in the progress report as well. The only other thing I really wanted to draw your attention to was in our annual report, we normally make a statement about self-assessment that we do on our processes and procedures. But this year we've actually had a peer review. So this is an independent person who's been brought in and under a brief that was signed off by Mike. They looked at our processes and how we comply with the expected standards of sector internal audit bodies. That's been assessed, and there was a report attached to Appendix 4, which has an action plan in it where there's some areas for improvement. But overall, we were given the highest rating that you can get, which I've actually forgotten.
Just generally conforms.
Thank you.
Not very glowing sort of
Yeah.
generally conforms.
It's a bit like
It's like the adequate or satisfactory option to sort of
Yeah.
It's the top ranking. Yeah.
So the person who did the assessment for us is the, as it's mentioned on the front, is the Assistant Director of Internal Audit at London. We work very closely with the London Audit Group, and we utilise our own resources to undertake these because we understand each other very well. But also we are independent. We come from very different types of council. And in very simple terms, if we had to get an external review commission, we would have to procure it. And we've had conversations earlier about the cost of procuring external review. I think it was done very independently, and then myself and David let Paul get on with it. He spoke to our staff, he spoke to officers, I believe he spoke to yourself, Chair. And also it does cover all 3 councils that we work for, and he was very fair about talking to people across those boroughs. So I believe it is independent, and it was done at no cost.
Just to reassure the committee and Darren and Kojo, actually they look for evidence, so we have to provide documentary evidence to support all of our self-assessments. So it's a bit like who audits the auditors. It's very much an audit of internal audits processes and how it complies with
And
that.
peer review is quite a common thing in most local government in terms of that.
Well, that being said, there's quite a long acronym filled paragraph section in here about the new global internal audit standards. I believe David's going to do a more informative document on that, but in very simple terms, the public sector internal audit standards need to be updated because there are new global internal audit standards that were issued by the Institute of Internal Auditors. They will be coming into play from January next year, but for public audience it will be April. And there's some consultation going on at the moment about how they can be applied appropriately within the public sector, because there are some issues about what is a board, the private sector, and the audit committee being the board, and how those relationships work. So we will give you an update on that. In fact, I'm going on a session tomorrow to hear more about how it impacts the public sector.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to say really, and then just quickly really to the appendix, which is the update on the progress report, and in particular two limited assurance reports, which are the housing allocations one, which was originally in March, because we have Kojo here to answer any questions we have, and then the asset management, which is newly reported.
Let's just take any general points and then we'll focus in on those if we can. Paragraph 3.1, can you just explain that to me, please? In words I can sort of logically understand. Page 163, paragraph 3.1.
So I suppose what we're setting out there is that the accounts order regulations underpin the requirements to have this annual review of effectiveness, which we do. It's a self-assessment, but every 5 years we have a peer review, and we're just setting out there how actually the internal audit service, as in most London boroughs, is a mixed economy, which includes an in-house team and external provision, the same as providers that are there for regulars.
Okay, that helps. And the framework was the number of Croydon.
So we have two frameworks we use. The London Borough Croydon framework, which is the ZARS, and then the Barnet framework, which is PGC.
Okay. Okay. Any general questions before we get into the housing and the IT?
Can I ask, on peer review on page 190, the last recommendation talks about introducing a whole review process of internal audit files. Part of your annual assessment. What is a whole review?
So after the event, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Rather than during the course of the audit, so it'd be after the audit's completed.
There's an awful phrase called a hot review, where you carry out reviews during some process. A cold review is obviously a retrospective.
And do you think this is useful? That's a suggestion.
Yeah.
I think there's two things. I think there's learning for the auditor who carried out the review. It's actually good for members of the audit team to review each other's work as well. They'll learn from it, but feedback to each other. So I think there's a good sort of learning development opportunity for the cold reviews.
We had some quite good sessions with the staff when we did a mock list of items. Obviously, I suppose, but it's a bit less pressure. So we did a mock assessment, and we literally spent the day sorting out any issues, answering questions. A lot of new staff as well. Helps them to understand the process.
All seems so they're quite robust, Tara.
I was just interested to see that the complaints audit was on page 134, the third, but on page 142 it says complaints was quite a used area. So it's quite interesting to see those two things. I bet in Grant Thornton's manual. I mean, you can't do audits on everything, so I'm sure that's a question of prioritisation. It's interesting to see that elsewhere in the circumstances I know that could be.
I think it's been done a couple of years ago, and we'll double check on when exactly there has been a long-term absence and things also we just recognising that in terms of but we very much count that.
Yeah, so just I think I've raised it in the past, but I understand, Moira, that you signed this declaration of independence and objectivity. This is from the head of it. I just still have this slight question over David being head of procurement and also being director of audit, and whether or not that does preserve independence.
David's the director of many different services. He has heads of service that look after the specifics. So, for example, Andy's head of fraud, I'm head of internal audit, we've got another head of insurance, and hopefully we'll have head of procurement soon. So David has an overarching view, a bit like Mike oversees a number of different functions within finance, the resources areas. So there is an independence part. Resources have meant that you've had to take a more active role because of
which is quite common across my colleagues in local government, particularly in London. You've got a number of responsibilities. So one of the ways we protect my independence and the services independence is where any review of any function I've got responsibility for, including procurement. We've had in the internal audit charter for some years now the recognition that Lisa, as Director of Financial Management, who's also CIPA qualified, would oversee the entirety of an audit process in an area I have management responsibility for, so that I have no say or influence in the scoping, conduct of the work, the draft reports. I just get to respond to the recommendations along with my colleagues. So that's best practice in the sector.
in fraud and insurance.
So I think the challenge for the committee, and you've explained this in many times, and I think, is that all those other functions are specific task functions, insurance, fraud.
Yeah.
The one on internal audit is almost a marking your own exam work, and that's the one that doesn't rest as logically with this committee as those other functions.
And ultimately, Mike would go see everything.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is the other things in the everything are very specific, if you like, fraud, insurance, or whatever. This one is an overarching one. And that's what causes. Liz, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
That's what causes some concern.
Yeah.
That's where the peer review hopefully helps to give some independent assurance.
Yeah, and I think you've answered that. It is something that this committee always comes back to, because it doesn't rest comfortably in relation to other sectors.
I would also add that if we were to do a review of procurement, I would probably get one of the external firms to do it.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's good. Yes.
I think there are a number of controls because of our size, because, as saying Lisa can get involved in the other audits. I'm there, and all the heads of service. So I think there are other avenues that they could go. I mean, I don't think it would be necessary, but if it ever became necessary, there's many avenues that the head of internal audit could take. Other than David. I mean, that's it.
I think as a committee, if I summarise the committee, we are comfortable with that, but it is something that is on our radar.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's the committee as well. I mean, that,
exactly.
Yeah. So can we come now to the two specific areas of housing and IT, and maybe two things for us that will be helpful. Your response to the actions in the, but also maybe you need to stop listening to this bit. Your response to the internal audit. Did you feel robust? Were you tested? Was it a walk through the park? Give us a feel of how the audit felt for you. So recommendations and where you see them, and a bit about the process. Go, do you want to lead on that?
To do reverse order, but definitely wasn't a walking park. No, but I think that it's it definitely is a robust period process, and it's a transparent process. But I think it's a fair process. It is a process which I don't think it doesn't come across to me as though they're trying to catch us out. They're effectively trying to just establish whether or not we are following true process, and if we're not, we're effectively challenged on that. So I've got no qualms about moral entity and how they approach us. Sure, I'm bored to yourself.
A slightly unfair question: if they were to do one thing even better, what would it be?
I think there was there was an audit which we had where there was a little bit of a delay in coming back to us on a specific item, but in fairness, that was because it was a very complicated issue. So it wasn't any procrastination or anything like that. It was because they wanted to get it right. But other than that, feedback from my services.
Okay, do you want them to go into your own particular audit, please?
Not so in relation to the
So I think we're on appendix 2, page 177.
yeah. So there were a number of recommendations on applications. All of the recommendations which had been made by the audit team, we have actually actioned those. One of them, which is the one around the housing management and registered providers, which is in relation to ensuring that offers do not go out too far in advance. That is one which is quite a sensitive issue, because we've got the issue of ensuring that the offers are made in a fair and timely manner. But we've also got the issue of not having long void periods. We do have extensive waiting lists, residents waiting to be picked out, residents in temporary accommodation, unfortunately, some of them in hotels. So trying to get the balance right between making the offers and having quick wait turnaround times is a challenge. In most local authorities, all the ones that I've worked in, there is a pre-allocation period where the property is not ready, but an offer is made. And this is where there is a little bit of tension between residents and the local authority, because residents will go and view the property, but it's not ready, and they will reject it based on what they see, which is understandable. But that is subject to works on the property to get the property up to standard. But we have liaised with the registered providers, and we have also liaised with housing management around how we can try and reduce the lead up time in terms of the offer and the property being there. I'm not sure if there's any question on that specific.
No, I'm just looking, Andrew. It's yeah. I mean, that void question is always an issue. And residents get very frustrated when they see the property is empty, particularly when they're waiting. But I appreciate it's a difficult one. Claire, do you have any slightly more expertise in this? Maybe do you have any the dog scrutiny committee?
Well, first of all, I'm really pleased to see this come to this committee, because allocations is one of those things where residents on the ground see what they see, and because of the nature of allocations being confidential and what have you, they maybe don't see the whole picture. And I think it's important that we as a committee are able to give as much assurance as we possibly can, specifically that the homes are let in a fair, transparent and efficient way. So I think some of the recommendations relate to efficiency, but I think from what I see on the ground, my main concern would be about the fairness. And looking at 2.3.4 on page 177, that first bullet point, or it's the only bullet point, we can see that in some cases the expected documentation was not complete or not on file. And I just wondered about that 9 out of 10 cases. Is that 9 out of 10 cases were complete, or 9 out of 10 were not?
Didn't think it would work. They expected to. You mean in terms of whether an offer was made and accepted?
No, it depends what whoever wrote this meant. The expected documentation was not complete, held on file for all cases reviewed.
So we reviewed, we had 10 in the sample. In all 9 we looked at, there was something missing.
Right, yeah, no, that's what I do, because that's very high. That's what I thought. Yeah.
And we've got the review and authorisation that's looking then, if that's the same, a lot better. It's 3 out of 10. And there was something.
Yeah.
But does this mean that the cases in question, the 10, were all both survivors, or they were all during the pandemic?
Check that. We can check that.
Because that would be maybe a bias in the sampling.
It does imply, I'm pretty sure there's a majority, but one of them were.
Before we speculate on
Says
that,
on
can,
the-
can,
I would have liked to see a sample that was broader.
Yes, so would I. Random sample.
It was, unfortunately,
That's the way it turned out.
Yeah.
How regularly is this sampling done?
well, we actually, I think this audit was actually spread out over quite a period of time. because it was quite-
and then we had this.
It's quite challenging because of trying to
Mm,
make it all happen at the right time.
yeah. Because I think if I were to speak frankly.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a little bit more on that particular aspect, specifically around the fairness and around the documentation. Especially given how high that is.
Yeah.
And we can't really conclude much if, I mean, it's a small sample.
Yeah.
I grant you. The register over 3,000 applicants and we've just picked up 10.
Yeah.
It's not surprising that maybe it's not as representative as it might be.
As part of the follow-up, we will try and ensure that it's much closer.
I think also if you look at the bold response under there, the service has confirmed that the issues identified were addressed. Maybe if we knew what happened to address them.
Yeah, we don't necessarily know why. I mean, we do refer to the pandemic and we do refer to different pathways, I think. Maybe that's not this one. But if the issues have been addressed for Grenfell survivors only, and by the way, that's a very, very specific cohort within the 3,000 because they are under different policies.
So what I can say is that last year last financial year, 352 applications. The year before we had about 410. So approximately we have around about between 350 and 450 applications each year. And it's a mix of households who are in recommendation, households who are just on the waiting list, and you go for
And people who are overcrowded.
people are overcrowded. Yeah, anybody who's on our housing register who fit within the applications policy. Now, prior to me arriving, there wasn't actually a direct offers policy. So I've introduced a direct offers policy so that it's transparent in terms of how we offer homes to people outside of those who are bidding. Understandably, there has been some challenges the services face in terms of finding suitable accommodation for all residents. But because of the bespoke nature of the way in which we support Grenfell survivors and Sunbury, you tend to see more direct offers made to Grenfell residents as opposed to residents who are on the housing register. So from the sample, if the majority of the cases picked up were direct offers, the majority of them would have been from Grenfell survivors, but it's not solely Grenfell survivors.
Is there a way, and if there isn't, say, of having another sample that is less Grenfell
That's what we do.
dominated? Because it's right that we review Grenfell, but I'm afraid it will be about a sample, but
And can I also add to that? Were we sampling specifically direct offers here, or were we sampling how is the allocations policy being applied across? Because in that case, I would like perhaps to suggest, as well as not only having Grenfell survivors, but also not only having direct offers, obviously being correlated there.
okay, so that's a request. Can we go away and have a look at it, please? Because the allocation bit is a crucial bit. It's something as more councillors we get a lot of.
Yes.
And if nothing else, we need to be able to answer that and answer people's concerns a bit better than just saying, well, that's a system. Any other, I'm slightly conscious of time, and there's lots of stuff in here, lots of really good stuff, lots of good information stuff. Any other questions? Primarily for clarification, I guess, we told you on the housing issue. In that case, then let's move on to Darren and the IT asset management.
Thank you, Chair.
2 questions you've got to answer.
Indeed, and my colleague Tojo, I'll answer in the reverse order. This was obviously the first period that we've actually had any auditory work done on us as a sovereign service. And we found the partners who came in to be very competent and very knowledgeable, particularly in the IT service management space, which was very positive. And again, in a very similar way, it was a very supportive discussion and conversation as opposed to we need to catch you on the hook. So they were very much looking for how we could mature our service rather than tell us what we were doing incorrectly in poor practice or against industry standards. So that was a very supportive approach, and the team was incredibly useful to us to make sure we were scheduling at very busy times as we mature our service.
So one thing they could do even better at?
I think there may need to be sometimes an appreciation for a brand new service to understand that maturing nature. So as you know, we are only 18 months into our life cycle as DD&T. At the time of the audit, this was a brand new function for RBKC, for asset management specifically. So an appreciation of that may answer some of the questions we have in here around single points of failure, where we're developing other members of the team to understand their responsibility and for the wider organisation as well.
So some of those issues may be raised in here would have self-corrected as the service matured.
Exactly that. Thank you.
So do you want to address any specifics, or are we any questions on specifics from the committee?
There is one I'd like to address, which is their high risk that I've identified around encryption. We do at build process, so as soon as we receive a laptop blank from Lenovo, we provide hard disk encryption at point of delivery. So there's no way to witness the delivery of encryption to a device. Alongside that, we also encrypt all of our network traffic end to end, from your device all the way to the Microsoft Cloud and any of our third parties. Again, there's no way to witness that as they describe here, but we can evidence that in our design documentation and our procedures for delivery commented here.
I'll be glad that I think we didn't see some of that information at the time, because I don't think people did.
Yeah, because it was
encrypted.
Yeah. So we
Councillor Yates, I'm going to turn to you first, because you were normally asked a question on this area. Do you have any?
Nothing at this stage, Jim.
Okay. Any questions from the?
I just have one question. The page 180, which talks about the hardware policy and your software policies. Have they yet been formally approved?
Not been formally approved as yet. They are in draft at the moment. They're also dependent on some changes we have to our telecoms provider for mobile devices, and we are just finalising the last deployment of the second phase of laptops. Then we'll publish that policy.
So the target date was implementation by June 2024. What is the revised?
That will be July 24, because of the issues we've had with onboarding our current contract with our PMO2. There's a delay there, so we want to just finalise that contract and then publish our policy.
Everybody's on these think pads now, are they?
Not everyone. We've still got about 600 out there of the old Microsoft. We're doing our best to resolve all those battery issues.
Bit late for me. There we go. Okay. Any other questions for Darren? Thank you to both of you. That was a useful to address the issues, but useful to help us get more reassurance about the internal process. So thank you. Any other final points on that?
Yes, I have. Appendix 1. When I looked at, I had a real anorak moment, and changes to the 23-24 audit plan on page 174. When I look back at last year, and we had changes to the 22-23 audit plan, I noted that the audits that were deferred in 22-23 to be deferred to 23-24.
There's someone left to firm there.
It's mine.
It's yours again. Sorry.
Sorry. 6 of those are being deferred in 23-24. And of, I think, how many was it? On changes to the 22-23 audit plan, 9 audits I couldn't find on the 23-24 audit plan, if you follow me.
I don't think so.
Yeah, what I've done, I've highlighted, I suppose, real anorak moment, and in green,
Yeah,
the ones that, these are deferred, this is the 22-23 audit plan carried forward.
yeah.
The green ones are still deferred in 23-24. That wasn't made apparent. But I'm not, you may have to defer them, but I think it should be apparent that these have been deferred for 2 years now.
We say sometimes in a future year, that doesn't mean the next year, it could be a future year. We have a 5-year plan.
Yeah,
and
it's
it's a
deferred
priority
to 23-24, consider for inclusion. Agreed the service to carry forward into 23-24 plan.
I think the best time really to look at this is when we produce the plan at the beginning of the year, because priorities change during the year and some things may not get done for 2 or 3 years because they just are not significant.
But what I'm concerned about is the orange ones here, which you can see the orange. Yeah, you can see the orange. They're sort of lost on here. They don't appear at all.
They just dropped off completely.
They just dropped off, and that's what I'm concerned about.
I need to see that because I can't see it here, sorry.
I can give you this actually.
Thank you. I just can't see it.
Is there a way of annotating the?
You understand what I'm saying, though? But my concern is things are being not being taken forward, or they're just being dropped, and we haven't got a complete picture.
Well, some things will just,
That we need to know.
Yes. Well, thanks. It's not why, it's, we just need to know is the information, isn't it?
I think I tried to tell you in year, but I mean, some things maybe quite obvious why they've gone because something doesn't exist anymore, but I'll try and make it more clear.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I want to go back too far.
No, I appreciate that, but I just couldn't see the round. Yeah.
Okay, so that report is for information only, and I think we've had a good stab at the information. So thank you very much. So can we now move on to item number 8, the anti-fraud annual report? Andy, you're going to, This report provides the committee with an account of fraud-related activities undertaken by the Corporate Anti-Fraud Squad from the 1st of April 23 to the 23rd of March 24 to minimise the risk of fraud, bribery and corruption occurring within and against the council. So Andy, you want to
Thank you, Chair. So the report covers the activity and counter-fraud activity, which for us is to provide you an assurance that activity is ongoing and it is aligned with the council's anti-fraud strategy. There's some big numbers in here, and I'll talk about that as we go forward. I suppose the first point I'd like to draw your attention to is really on page 206, and it is the table, just highlighting a couple of big figures. So there's a couple of caveats. First and foremost, I think these are notional figures. These are figures that we calculate and we identify based on where we identify a fraud case or where we prevent a fraud from happening. We place a financial figure against that, based again on research where possible and information where we can glean it, whether that's from the Cabinet Office or whether for other different papers that are out there and available to us. And as I say, we like to make sure that that's evidence. We're not saying that this is hard cash that we are recovering. We're never saying that. What we are saying is that our activity does have some value in terms of the work we're doing and in terms of the fraud that we are preventing and detecting. We like to talk about new and emerging issues and risks. And on page 207, I've just brought to your attention, it's still not quite finalised, but that's the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act. This act is probably not aimed at local authorities. It's really aimed at the sort of organisations where there's more opportunity for their employees to commit fraud on behalf of the business. And unfortunately, that might be some of these cold calling companies where they're trying to do their utmost to try and, unfortunately, mislead the public in order to make money. However, because of the criteria within this new act, we fall within scope. However, I'd like to feel that in terms of public sector, we have anti-fraud policies in place, we have fraud awareness training, and I like to feel that we're actually in a good position because the new offence that's arising is a failure to prevent fraud occurring, or should we say, our officers committing fraud on behalf of the council. I don't think that's necessarily likely, but as long as we've got the right processes and policies in place, then I think we will be protected. The full description of what counts as protecting ourselves, we're still waiting for the government to announce that. Obviously, there's been a pause because of the general election, but probably late autumn we should get some more indication. And once I know a bit more, I will come back to the committee to update you on where we are with that, and also where our position is in terms of what we already have in place, so that we can protect ourselves going forward. There's a note on whistleblowing. The committee asked me just to give a breakdown of the route, i.e. where whistleblowing referrals have come through over the last few years. So on page 208, I've provided a table there just outlining that. And those are the real main bits that I wanted to tease out, and obviously happy to take questions regarding the paper.
Okay, the number of frauds doubled, as has the value. Is that down to better detection, or is there more fraud?
It's always a hard one, isn't it? It's that hard question that we often get posed. If an organisation, more fraud is found, is it because there's more fraud in the system, or is it because you've got robust processes in place? I like to think you've got robust processes in place and a really strong counter-fraud service. However, I think what sometimes skews the figures here is the National Fraud Initiative, which every 2 years is a mass data matching exercise. And there were a number of cases which we identified from them. Now, what's probably changed over the last sort of 12 to 18 months, probably a little bit longer, you may recall, and it's referred to in the paper, that our counterparts in housing management have a small resource there that deals with tackling tenancy fraud as well. So as an organisation, we see tenancy fraud as a risk. We want to make sure that those properties are for those who are genuinely in need of those properties. We put additional resource into tackling that. Now, what that's meant is that it's freed up some of my officers just a little bit that take more time and effort looking at the data that's come through from the National Fraud Initiative, and we've got more results. So from that, I would say we've not so much got better, we've got more efficient at identifying those cases. So that's slightly gone up. I think values will go up year on year. And in lots of cases, some of the values that we identified as notional values, there's been no new research done. So if we have a value, say, for example, on how much a room costs the local authority to keep that room for temporary accommodation, the latest we have on that goes back to 2021. So we're just really adding on inflation values to try and bring those figures up to date. We calculate our values for tenancy fraud, as an example, differently to some other local authorities. The fraud advisory panel, they produced a paper a couple of years ago, and they valued a recovered property at £42,000, regardless of size. Now, I feel that really there should be some recognition for the property size, because there's probably more one-bedroom and studio flats available in the Royal Borough than there would be 3 or 4 bedrooms, which are really needed by this authority. And therefore, I place higher values on those. So if, for example, we're getting 3 and 4 bedrooms back, I feel the notional value should really be based on the number of rooms.
Let's do that notional value again.
42,000.
So the fraud advisory panel believe that one property is £42,000 saved. And what they're basing that on is the cost of temporary accommodation, the length of time a family might sit in temporary accommodation, as well as some additional fit value.
It's not based on the bricks and mortar of the property.
No, it's not. No, it's absolutely very. It's primarily based just on what the local authority is paying out general fund.
Right.
That's the aim. We value it slightly different. We have a value of around £1,800 per room, but that will then vary because of size, and then there will be multipliers on top of that. And the reason being is that someone needing a 3 or 4 bedroom, unfortunately, the wait's going to be a hell of a lot longer in temporary accommodation, more cost for the local authority than a 1 or 2 bedroom. So we try to value ours accordingly. And again, in the paper, we've got the lists of the properties we've got back and how much we value in that. So going back to the original question, I think the values have gone up primarily because we have, I think we've been better at identifying or trying to place a value on them, on each individual
But it's
pool.
number as well.
The number, I think, have gone up because they're, I think in terms of the tenancies got more back. If we notice, that's almost doubled. Again, we've put additional resource in there. So housing management have some officers who are looking to get properties back. But if it's a fraud and it's a prosecution, then my officers are involved. But that just means there's more feet on the ground trying to recover those properties to put them back into council stock. The National Fraud Initiative, that's boosted some figures along the way. And also in terms of the blue badge, we've had people out, not obviously on the streets, and we have individuals there making sure that we patrol the area in terms of blue badge to try and really act as a deterrent. Because unless we can stop the individuals, unfortunately, there's no other way of deterring people other than to try and stop them and prosecute them.
It's really bolstered the numbers.
Yes, every year, so it has an effect.
In addition to that, the National Fraud Initiative, the analytical support system that they use, we brought into that as a fraud hub. So what we're trying to do is to do these matches on a more regular basis.
Yes.
So hopefully it might boost the figures more evenly rather than spikes every 2 years.
Okay, any other?
Sorry, two fold. The DWP deceased records. I mean, I genuinely staggering amount, and frankly, really would love it if we didn't have to wait every 2 years to do that. And perhaps that's something we should keep logging about. My general question was about the lack of use of the whistleblowing policy, and also the corporate fraud line, and actually what more we can do just to remind people or to actually push it out there in the general public.
I think the way of addressing that, and actually this is where the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act helps, is that once we have a full understanding of what that involves, the aim really will be to try and have a mandatory fraud awareness course that everyone across the organisation has to deal with and actually take. And we're going to have a big section on there about whistleblowing, just to remind them again the fact that there is a whistleblowing line. It's also an independent one. So if they're worried about speaking to anyone in the council, they can go to the independent line, and hopefully that will be try and get it out there. We did fraud awareness week. We had a stand downstairs, and we want to try and push that. But again, it may also be the fact that sometimes individuals do worry about coming forward. One of the problems we do tend to find, and this is horrible, is that individuals will only blow the whistle once they back themselves into a corner, perhaps because of a disciplinary matter. And that sometimes is more of a vexatious whistleblowing referral than it is because they think they're then protected rather than giving us actual information that will help us stop fraud. Unfortunately, because of the protections from whistleblowing, people misuse it.
Okay. Because you give us lots of good data. The bit we don't have the deterrence factor, isn't it? When people know this is happening, they're deterred from doing anything or producing it. So thank you. So that's a paper for information and discussion. We've had a brief discussion, and thank you for that. And we get this every year, so that's good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we now move swiftly to item number 9, forward programme and action tracker. And Liz, you were bound to have a question on something we missed.
I don't.
Or there's a.
I don't.
So it's not to disappoint. I do on 107 still ask if I'd let legal services have a look at that. Yeah, we will, but we're updated. It's just your whole response does not talk about going to legal services at all. It talks about having
I did speak to them. But we need to reflect on that in the updates that we're doing. So I can't
It's wording in the, but I'm happy to take it offline.
Yeah.
I think we've done a lot of work over the last year or so on cleaning up this and getting it into a state that actually is more meaningful. So that's good. Thank you to you for that, for doing that. Anything else on? That's the information, and I think we've looked at that and we've had a chance to ask any questions if you wanted to. So, any other oral or written items committee wish to raise? No other items that are urgent. So this concludes the meeting tonight. So thank you all very much for your contributions.
Thank you very much.
And the next meeting is the 22nd of July. And I look forward to seeing everybody there.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, this won't be an exact size.
There we go.
Those are these are deferred. Yeah.